So it is April 1846, and the air in Shiraz, Iran, is just thick with dust.
Oh, yeah, dust, suffocating heat, and just a really specific kind of political paranoia.
Exactly, because the Shah has just dispatched, well, basically his most lethal intellectual weapon to the city.
Right, and we should be clear, this isn't like a general with an army.
No, no, it's a cleric, a man named Sayyid Yahya Darabi, who is known to history as Vahid.
And Vahid has been sent on this incredibly high-stakes mission. He's there to interrogate a young man, a merchant known as the Bab, who is, claiming divine revelation.
Which has the establishment completely terrified, right? I mean, the clerics are in an absolute
Yeah.
uproar over
Oh,
this.
totally. The establishment is shaking. So the Shah sends Vahid, and Vahid is a man whose mind is basically a steel trap.
Like a supercomputer of the 19th century.
Yeah, exactly. Just a steel trap of theology, philosophy, and literally thousands of memorized traditions. His goal is to completely dismantle this young man's claims.
Because Vahid was, the ultimate insider.
He really was. I
Yeah.
mean, his father was a highly prominent cleric. Vahid moved in the absolute highest circles of the royal court,
Right.
and his entire life had been dedicated to the architecture of Islamic scholasticism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is the guy you call when you need an intellectual demolition job done.
An intellectual demolition job. I love that.
Yeah.
He arrives in Shiraz fully equipped to just trap the Bab in this labyrinth of obscure theological questions.
Exactly. He is ready to go to war, intellectually speaking.
But, and this is where our deep dive really starts, when Vahid finally enters the room and sits down across from this young man, he doesn't do any of that.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't pull out a list of trap questions. He doesn't start quoting complex philosophical treatises.
He decides to do something incredibly strange instead.
Right. He decides in that exact moment on a silent test.
It is honestly a brilliant investigative move.
He really is.
Vahid resolves to ask a question, but he decides he will only ask it in his heart.
He literally won't speak a single word of it out loud. He just sits there in silence.
Just demanding an answer to a question he hasn't even asked.
And the specific question he locks inside his own mind, it's a request for a commentary on a very famous but very brief piece of scripture, right?
Yes, the Surah of Kawthar.
The Surah of Kawthar. So for those who might not know, what exactly is that?
So it's the 108th chapter of the Quran, and it is famous primarily because it is the absolute shortest chapter in the entire book.
Like, how short are we talking?
In Arabic, it is a mere 3 verses, just 10 words.
Wow. 10 words. And the English translation is roughly, verily we have given thee abundance, therefore pray unto thy Lord and sacrifice. Verily thy enemy is the one cut off.
Right. And to really understand the weight of this silent request, you have to wrap your head around the history of those 10 words.
Because there's a lot of emotional baggage there.
So much. According to tradition, this surah was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad at literally the lowest point in his life.
Right, his infant son had just died.
Exactly. His son had died, and his enemies in Mecca were mocking him. They were calling him cut off.
Meaning he had no male heir.
Right. Meaning his lineage was dead, and they thought his whole movement would just die with him.
That is just brutally cruel.
It is. But in the midst of that devastating grief and, public humiliation, these 3 verses are revealed, and they promise him Kawthar.
Kawthar, which means abundance.
Yes, an infinite flowing abundance that would outlast all of his enemies.
So Vahid is sitting there in Shiraz holding this incredibly dense, emotionally and historically heavy 10-word poem in his mind.
Yeah, he is essentially daring the Bab.
He's like, if you speak for God, read my mind. And not only that, unpack this specific, impenetrable diamond of attacks.
And this is where it gets crazy. Because anticipating this entirely unspoken request, the Bab just takes up his pen.
He doesn't even pause.
No pause.
Yeah.
He doesn't ask for clarification like, hey, what are you thinking about? In a single sitting, with Vahid just watching him, he writes the Tafsir Surah al-Kawthar.
The commentary on the Surah of Abundance.
Right. He takes those 3 verses and just expands them into this massive, multi-layered, cosmological map of reality.
He writes an entire book in one sitting.
In one sitting.
And reading through the historical accounts in our sources for this deep dive, this act, the speed of it, the fact that it answered the secret test of his heart, and just the sheer overwhelming depth of the knowledge pouring onto the page, it absolutely breaks Vahid.
Yeah, his skepticism just shatters.
This lethal intellectual weapon sent by the Shah is transformed almost on the spot into an ardent, devoted disciple.
He walked into that room as the Shah's Grand Inquisitor, basically, and he walked out ready to lay down his life for the Bab's movement.
It is one of the most dramatic paradigm shifts in religious history.
Oh, absolutely.
And that transformation is really the mission of our deep dive today. We are going to look under the hood of this exact document, the Tafsir Suratul Kawthar.
We need to figure out how you stretch 10 words into a map of the universe.
Exactly. We'll unpack the multi-tiered hermeneutics, the outward and inward readings. We'll look at the microscopic symbolism of individual Arabic letters.
And ultimately, what this whole concept of Kawthar means for you, listening to this right now, as a metaphor for divine guidance in our very noisy world.
Because beneath all this thick 19th century theology, this text is fundamentally about how a human being actually recognizes truth.
Right. It dismantles the old ways of proving something is real, and it builds an entirely new framework.
So let's start exactly there. Before we get into the wild interpretive gymnastics of the text itself, we really need to understand the crisis that was happening in 1846.
Yes, because the Bab opens this commentary by pointing out a massive flaw in how everyone around him is arguing about truth.
He starts by diagnosing this crisis of certitude.
Right. The Bab looks at the landscape of the Islamic world, which at the time is fractured into countless sects, schools of thought, political factions, and he notes a really profound irony.
He writes, "Today all sects prove their claims through the Quran and traditions."
It's the ultimate paradox of written authority. Every single cleric, whether they are fiercely orthodox or radically mystical, they are pulling from the exact same book to prove completely contradictory points.
It reminds me so much of how data is used in modern political debates.
Oh, that is a perfect modern parallel.
Like, you can have two think tanks with completely opposing ideologies, right? And they will both cite the exact same economic study.
Yep, they just highlight different paragraphs.
Exactly. They highlight different parts and claim the data proves they are unequivocally right. But when everyone is citing the same source, the source itself stops being a mechanism for resolving the debate.
Right. The Bab recognizes that human beings have weaponized the inherited text. Because of this, he argues that truth can no longer be established simply by quoting past authority.
Or having the most impressive academic pedigree.
Exactly. You can't just throw verses at each other and see who wins the debate. There has to be a higher standard.
Yeah.
So he introduces this concept of a divinely appointed balance.
The balance. And the Arabic word for that is mizan, right?
Yes, mizan. A scale, a standard of measure.
Okay, so he writes that without the specific measure, whosoever possesses not the measure hath no pure truth from God.
He is relocating the center of certainty. He's pulling it away from the institutions, away from the universities and the clerics, and moving it to the immediacy of revealed speech itself.
Okay, I have to stop you there, though, because my skeptical alarm bells are ringing, and I'm sure Vahid's were too.
I'm sure they were.
If the Bab is saying, you can't trust your debates about the old book, you have to use the new balance, and then he claims to be the new balance, I mean, that is a completely circular argument.
It does sound like one, doesn't it?
Yeah. My proof is my own writing because I'm the one who writes the proof. It feels like a total logical trap.
Well, if you diagram it as a logical syllogism on a whiteboard, yes, it appears circular. But the Bab isn't offering a philosophical syllogism here. He is offering what we call an enacted proof.
An enacted proof.
Right. He is stepping onto the cleric's own turf, their mastery of language and revelation, and he is raising the stakes to an impossible height.
Okay.
He tells them, if you want proof, you don't look at my arguments about history. You look at the verses themselves. He explicitly states in the commentary, were I to utter but one word, the balance of verses surpasseth all that is on earth.
So it's not about the logic of his argument, it's about the undeniable performance of the creation.
Exactly.
It makes me think of an analogy. Imagine someone walks into a room of elite musicians and claims they are a newly discovered, reincarnated master composer, like a true prodigy.
Oh, I like where this is going.
The musicians wouldn't sit there and demand the person produce a birth certificate or a university degree in music theory, right?
No, they would just point to the piano and say, play.
Yes. But it goes even further than that. Imagine they give this person a simple 3-note nursery rhyme, like Mary had a little lamb, and they tell them to improvise. If that person sits down and in real time, without pausing, spins those 3 notes into a 4-hour, mathematically perfect, emotionally devastating symphony that brings everyone in the room to tears.
Then the music is the proof.
Exactly. You don't need a certificate. The sheer scale and impossibility of the creation validates the claim on its own.
That captures the dynamic perfectly.
Right.
And the Bab knew this was his ultimate evidence. He actually threw down this exact kind of challenge repeatedly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the text, he says that if he wished, he could write 1,000 verses of intimate prayers in 6 hours, just to demonstrate a speed and depth that human cognition simply cannot fake.
Wow. 6 hours.
Right. He is asking Vahid to evaluate the aesthetic, spiritual, and intellectual power of the utterance itself. I mean, could a 26-year-old merchant with basic schooling produce a symphony of this magnitude spontaneously?
We all have our own silent tests, don't we?
We really do.
Like, for you listening, we bring our skepticism, our rigid expectations, to the media we consume, looking for our own version of a clean, objective proof.
A degree, a title, a verified badge.
Exactly. But the text is challenging that instinct. It's asking if we have the capacity to recognize truth by its own intrinsic weight, its own frequency, without needing the establishment to co-sign it for us first.
It requires a highly refined internal balance. You have to strip away your prejudices and simply listen to the music being played.
So let's look at the sheet music.
Let's do it.
The Bab takes this 10-word sutta and begins to peel it back. Our sources describe this as a multi-tiered hermeneutic.
Yes, which basically means he doesn't just offer one single meaning, he offers layers of meaning that stack on top of each other.
And he starts with what he calls the outward station.
Right. The Bab knew exactly who was sitting across from him. Vahid was a master of Shi'i tradition. So the Bab begins by mapping those 3 verses onto the most sacred foundational history of Shi'i Islam. He takes the word Kawthar, abundance, and says, in this outward reading, this represents the bestowal of Ali, the cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet, who Shia Muslims believe was the rightful first successor.
Because Ali is the source of the spiritual lineage. He is the abundance from which the Imams flow.
Exactly. Then he moves to the next phrase, pray unto thy Lord. He maps this onto the guardianship of Hassan, the second Imam, who is historically known for his profound piety and devotion.
And then we hit the word sacrifice.
Yes. And in a Shi'i context, there is only one ultimate sacrifice.
Hussein.
Hussein at Karbala, the third Imam, who was massacred along with his family and followers by the armies of the Umayyad Caliphate.
Which is such a profound historical trauma for that culture. I mean, the thirst in the desert, the slaughter of the Prophet's grandson.
It is the defining tragedy.
So to map the word sacrifice from a poem given to Muhammad decades earlier onto the future massacre of his own grandson, that is intellectually devastating.
It is. It fits the text with a terrifying perfection.
And then the final phrase, verily thy enemy is the one cut off. That maps perfectly onto those Umayyad forces, right? The historical enemies of the Prophet's family.
Right. So by laying out this outward reading, the Bab achieves something crucial right out of the gate.
What's that?
He proves to Vahid that he possesses total, flawless mastery over the Orthodox tradition. He isn't ignoring history. He is honoring the deepest theological memories of Shi'ism. He shows Vahid, I know your world better than you do.
But he doesn't stay in that world. Having established his credibility, he basically says, okay, that's the surface, now we go inward.
Yes, and this is where it gets mind-bending.
The text starts to shift like a kaleidoscope. The definition of Kawthar doesn't stay fixed as Ali. As the commentary descends into deeper spiritual stations, Kawthar becomes Muhammad himself.
Then it becomes Fatima, the Prophet's daughter.
Then it encompasses all the Imams. Then it becomes the Qayyim, the promised savior. It just keeps expanding layer by layer.
It is a totally dynamic, fluid hermeneutic. The meaning is contingent on the spiritual altitude of the reader. But the Bab doesn't stop there. He pushes the interpretation to the absolute summit.
The peak of the mountain.
Exactly. At the highest, most inward station of meaning, the Bab interprets Kawthar, the abundance, the water of life, as myself.
Wait, hold on.
I know.
This is where you lose me and where I imagine a lot of clerics would absolutely lose their minds. He writes a commentary on a 1,000-year-old sacred text and concludes that at its deepest, most profound level, the text is secretly just talking about him.
Yep.
I mean, how does that not cross the line into monumental, unforgivable arrogance?
It is a massive friction point, you're right. And it's essential to understand why he makes that claim. You really have to look at it through the lens of manifestation theology.
Okay, break that down for me. What exactly is manifestation theology?
So think of divine reality as a single blinding light. Humanity cannot look directly at this light. It would destroy us.
Right, it's too powerful.
Exactly. So throughout history, this light shines through different perfectly polished, glass lamps.
Okay.
One lamp is named Moses, one is named Jesus, one is named Muhammad. The physical lamps are different. They exist in different centuries, they speak different languages, they have different human names.
But the light inside them?
The light inside them is identical. It is the exact same eternal reality.
Okay, I follow the lamp analogy.
In this framework, the Bab is claiming to be the newest land, the manifestation of God for this new age. Therefore, when he reads the Quran and he sees the word Kawthar pointing to the ultimate divine abundance, he isn't inserting a 26-year-old merchant from Shiraz into the text.
The light is recognizing itself.
Exactly. The eternal divine reality animating the text is the exact same divine reality animating the Bab. He is claiming that all previous scriptures were essentially pointing toward the continuous unfolding presence of this light.
But, I mean, that is a massive loophole.
How so?
Anyone could just walk into a room, point to a holy book and say, I'm not arrogant, I'm just the new lamp. The light is claiming the text, not my ego.
Fair point.
How does Vahid, sitting in that suffocating room in Shiraz, know he isn't just dealing with a highly educated megalomaniac?
Which brings us right back to the piano and the enacted proof. The claim of being the manifestation, the claim of being the light, is entirely empty unless the person can generate the heat and brilliance of the light. Vahid doesn't just have to take the Bab's word for it. He is watching the Bab produce the evidence in real time.
Because if a megalomaniac tries to write a multi-layered, philosophically flawless, mathematically intricate commentary on a sacred text at lightning speed, they will fail.
They will absolutely fail. The text will collapse under its own contradictions. The Bab's claim to be the ultimate meaning of the text is validated only because the text he is physically writing possesses a power that Vahid recognizes as superhuman.
So the audacity of the claim is only sustainable because the execution of the proof is flawless. It's like the Bab is arguing that revelation isn't a locked box from the past that clerics get to guard. It's a living, breathing entity.
Yes. He treats the Surah of Kawthar not as a historical artifact, but as an active spiritual blueprint. It wasn't just a promise given to a grieving father in 7th century Arabia. It is an engine of divine reality that is constantly operating.
And it was operating right there in 1846.
Right there in the room with Vahid.
Well, if the words of the text are a living entity, then it makes sense that the Bab would eventually look closer. And this is where the commentary takes a turn that I found completely hypnotic.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
He moves past the sentences, he moves past the words, he zooms in on the very atomic structure of the ink on the page. He starts breaking the surah down letter by letter.
This brings us into the realm of ilm al-huruf, or the science of letters. It's often called letter mysticism.
Right.
In Arabic, as in Hebrew, letters aren't just phonetic symbols, They carry numerical values, geometrical significance, and profound philosophical weight.
So the Surah of Kawthar in Arabic is composed of exactly 43 letters.
43 letters.
And the Bab takes the time to perform a microscopic exegesis on them. Our sources point out that he believes the divine mystery has penetrated all things, down to the smallest particle. Language doesn't just describe reality, language houses being.
He is treating scripture as a living cosmos. He takes the letter alif, for instance.
Right, the aleph. It's the first letter of the Arabic alphabet. For those who haven't seen it, it's basically just a single, straight, vertical stroke.
And because it is a vertical stroke, it visually connects the heavens and the earth.
Oh, wow.
Its numerical value is 1. It's the beginning of all writing. You literally cannot form other letters without first establishing the stroke of the alif.
That makes a lot of sense.
So the Bab maps a single letter to the divine cloud, the throne of praise, and the firmament of decree. He says it represents the fire of origination. All the complex theology of creation, of the one God originating the universe, is folded into a single drop of ink pulled downward on a page.
And he does this for other letters too, right?
Oh, yes. He takes the letter Kaf and says it is the primal word that appeared on Mount Sinai with Moses and on Mount Paran with Jesus.
It's just a relentless, dizzying level of detail.
He takes the letter Nun and describes it as the light of God and the niche of the covenant. It demands a complete paradigm shift in how you read. You aren't just parsing grammar anymore.
It makes perfect sense if you think about it through the lens of biology or mathematics.
What do you mean?
Think about human DNA. A single drop of blood or a tiny skin cell is microscopic, but inside that single cell is the entire genetic blueprint of a fully formed human being. The part contains the whole. Or think of fractal geometry, where you can zoom in infinitely on a pattern, and the exact same complex structure repeats itself perfectly at the micro level.
That is a great way to look at it.
If this text is genuinely a divine creation, then it must operate like the rest of the universe. A single letter of divine revelation must contain the spiritual blueprint of the entire cosmos.
That is the exact philosophical argument the Bab is making here. The macrocosm is perfectly mirrored in the microcosm, and because the divine reality is infinite, the meaning inside a single letter is also infinite.
Is there a limit to how much he could write about this?
Well, there is a staggering quote in the commentary where the Bab tries to explain the scale of this. He writes, "Were I to elaborate but a single letter from that surging bitter sea, the ink would be exhausted and the pens would break."
The ink would be exhausted and the pens would break.
Yeah.
That is just a haunting way to describe infinity. You literally run out of physical materials in the universe before you run out of meaning in a single letter of the Word of God.
It is a beautiful image, but it also serves a very tactical purpose in his argument with Vahid.
How so?
By breaking open time and space within the very letters of the text, the Bab destroys the concept of linear human history.
The letters transcend time.
Exactly. And if time is fluid, then the entire timeline of Islamic prophecy is suddenly fluid. Which brings us to the biggest, most dangerous timeline issue in all of Shia theology.
The hidden imam.
Yes,
Hidden imam.
we absolutely have to talk about the hidden imam.
Yep.
Because you cannot understand Vahid's psychology without understanding the concept of the Qaim, the promised one.
Right. In Shia Islam, the central belief is that the 12th imam did not die, but went into a state of occultation gaiba over 1,000 years ago.
He was hidden by God.
Yes. And the faithful believe he will return at the end of time to fill the earth with justice and eradicate tyranny.
So for 1,000 years, the defining psychological and theological posture of this entire civilization has been awaiting.
Just waiting, generation after generation, born and dying, just waiting for this magical figure to emerge from hiding.
And Vahid's entire career, his entire intellectual architecture, is built on drawing maps of how and when this savior will arrive. Exactly. But the Bab marshals all of these traditions, all of this letter mysticism, to completely disrupt that map. He argues that the discipline of awaiting must now end.
It must be replaced by the discipline of recognition.
Right. The waiting is over.
But how does he logically explain the hiddenness? If the imam has been hiding in a cave or an unseen realm for a millennium, how does a 26-year-old merchant sitting in Shiraz suddenly claim to be the fulfillment of that?
Because the Bab fundamentally reframes what occultation actually is. He argues that the Promised One was never hiding in a magical realm.
So where was he?
The occultation was not a physical absence from the earth. It was a state of spiritual blindness in the hearts of the people.
Oh, wow.
The text describes how the Qur'an might walk in the markets, negotiate trades, and step on the very carpets of the people, yet they do not recognize him. The hiding is just humanity's inability to see what is standing right in front of them.
He uses the story of Joseph to explain this, right? Which is brilliant because it's a story found in both the Bible and the Quran.
It is the perfect analogy. When Joseph was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, he eventually rose to power in Egypt.
Right.
Years later, a famine hits, and his brothers travel to Egypt to beg for grain. They stand right in front of Joseph. They speak to him. They look him in the eye, but they do not recognize him.
Because he doesn't look like the terrified little boy they threw in a well.
Exactly.
He looks like an Egyptian ruler. He doesn't fit their preconceived visual map of who he is supposed to be.
Precisely. The Bab is telling Vahid, the brothers of Joseph were in the presence of the one they sought, but their own assumptions blinded them. They only recognized him when he chose to reveal his true reality to them.
So the Bab is saying the trial of this age is identical.
Identical. The ultimate truth is quite literally walking in the marketplace, breathing the dust of Shiraz, stepping on the rugs. But the clerics are completely blinded because they are looking for a mythical figure descending from the clouds with a sword, not a young man holding a pen.
Imagine the horror of that realization for Vahid.
It would be shattering.
The realization that your own theology, the thousands of traditions you memorized to help you find the truth, has actually become the very thing blinding you to the truth.
Yeah.
You spent your whole life obsessing over the map, and because of that, you don't recognize the territory when you are standing smack in the middle of it.
It is the ultimate tragic irony of religious history. The establishment almost always crucifies or exiles the new messenger because the messenger doesn't match the institutional expectations.
which again forces you to look in the mirror.
Mhm.
How often do we miss profound, world-changing truths in our own lives because they don't arrive in the packaging we
I
expected?
do it all the time.
We want our truth to come from a specific political party or a specific scientific journal or a specific algorithm. And if it arrives quietly, walking in the market in a form we were taught to ignore, we just walk right past it.
It requires a massive recalibration of how we perceive reality.
Mhm.
We have to learn to recognize the truth by its essence, not its outfit. And the Bob offers a really beautiful, elaborate metaphor for this recalibration in the final sequence of the commentary.
Right. He returns to the literal meaning of the word Kawthar, abundance.
Yes, and he maps it onto the four mythological rivers of paradise mentioned in the Quran.
Water, milk, honey, and wine. These are traditionally viewed as the literal physical rewards waiting in heaven for believers, right?
Traditionally, yes. But the Bab turns them into a psychological and spiritual map of revelation itself. He turns them into an ascending journey of the soul.
These rivers become the mechanism through which divine guidance flows into the human heart. Let's walk through them, starting with the river of water, which the Quran describes as unpolluted and incorruptible.
Okay, let's start with water.
If I'm trying to reason this out based on his logic, water makes sense as the bedrock. It's transparent, it cleanses, it is the fundamental source of all biological life. You literally can't have the other liquids without water. So what does it represent spiritually?
The Bab says the unpolluted water represents divine unity. It is the absolute origin, the pre-eternal fire.
So it's the foundation.
It is the fundamental paradigm-shifting realization that there is no God but God. Stripping away all idols, all egos, all false authorities, it is the bedrock of existence. If you don't drink from this river first, the rest of the journey is impossible.
Okay, so water establishes the foundation of unity. Then we move to the river of pure milk.
Pure milk.
Again, just thinking about human experience, milk implies mother. It implies a nurturing dynamic. It's the first food we take in when we are entirely helpless and dependent on something greater than ourselves. Does the text go into that kind of relationship?
It does exactly that. The Bab maps the pure milk onto prophetic communion. He describes it as the water of the spirit of devotion, where the servant ascends to the paradise of intimacy.
The paradise of intimacy, I like that.
It is the stage of spiritual nourishment. You have recognized the unity of God that's the water, and now you are being actively fed and nurtured by the manifestation, which is the milk. You are growing in your relationship with the divine.
That makes beautiful sense. Then the third river is clarified honey. In the ancient world, honey was basically a miracle substance. It is incredibly sweet, but it is also the ultimate preservative. Bacteria cannot grow in it. It doesn't rot. It sustains over immense periods of time.
Which perfectly aligns with the Bab's interpretation. He says honey represents eloquent discourse, spiritual dominion, and the testimony of souls to the guardianship of the people of God.
It's the wisdom, then.
Yes, it is the sweetness of divine wisdom. It is the deep, incorruptible understanding of the laws and the structure of reality. When you drink the honey, you aren't just being nurtured anymore like a child. You are comprehending the intricate, sustaining wisdom of the universe.
You are absorbing the intellect of the revelation. And then we arrive at the fourth river, which in almost all mystical poetry from this region is the pinnacle, the crimson wine.
The crimson wine.
Wine alters your consciousness. It intoxicates. It makes you forget yourself entirely.
And that is precisely its meaning here. The crimson wine represents mystic intoxication, the blood of sacrifice, and the ultimate awe of servitude.
Obliterating the ego.
Exactly. It is the stage where the ego is completely obliterated, the self is forgotten, dissolved entirely in the overwhelming majesty of the divine presence. You have moved from knowing God to being nurtured by God, to understanding God, to finally surrendering utterly to God. It is a state of pure, ecstatic sacrifice.
What I find so striking about this entire sequence is the location of these rivers.
How do you mean?
Well, traditional theology puts them behind the gates of death. You have to die, be judged, and enter paradise to get a taste of this water or wine. But the Bab takes these afterlife rewards and just drags them right into the present tense.
He democratizes paradise. He explicitly states that these are not post-mortem rewards. They are active, rushing streams of divine guidance flowing right now.
In this life.
In this physical life. The drinker of Kawthar is meant to pass through all four streams. He writes that if you gaze into your own heart with true vision, you can find the ultimate effusion of creation within that own self.
Paradise isn't a destination on a map, it's an internal capacity. The rivers are flowing inside the human soul. And there is a specific ancient scientific metaphor he uses to describe what happens when a human being actually drinks from these internal rivers. He talks about red sulfur.
Ah, yes, the alchemical metaphor. The Bob writes that through the mere emanation of this spiritual water, a person's being is transformed into something rarer than red sulfur.
For listeners who might not be up on their medieval alchemy, red sulfur was the legendary substance, basically the philosopher's stone.
Right, the
It
catalyst.
was a catalyst that could instantly transmute base corrupted metals like lead into pure, shining gold.
By choosing that specific alchemical metaphor, the Bob is making a really profound point about the mechanism of spiritual transformation. Encountering this divine utterance, experiencing the enacted proof, isn't just about changing your mind.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. It's not about adopting a new set of intellectual beliefs or memorizing a new creed or joining a different social club. It is about a fundamental, chemical-level transmutation of your very soul.
You walk in as base metal.
Heavy, corruptible, dull. And the water of Kawthar hits you, and you are transmuted into gold.
Which is the perfect description of what happened to Vahid. We started this deep dive with a man walking into a room in Shiraz. He walked in as lead.
He really did.
He was heavy with centuries of tradition, weighed down by skepticism, rigid in his academic armor, fully intending to destroy the man sitting across from him, and then he encountered this rushing river of text.
You witnessed the balance. He saw the letters broken open.
He tasted the rivers of Kawthar, and he was completely, irreversibly transmuted.
The scale of what occurred in that room is just staggering. A silent test, a secret thought, locked in the mind of a skeptical cleric, provoked a document that fundamentally redefines the nature of scriptural evidence. It takes the entire architecture of Islamic expectation and turns it completely inside out.
It cracks open the Arabic alphabet to reveal the cosmos. It shifts the religious paradigm from passively waiting for a savior in the clouds to actively recognizing the truth walking in the marketplace. And it takes the mythological rivers of heaven and channels them directly into the veins of the reader. It is a breathtaking achievement.
And it forces anyone who reads it to confront their own internal balance. It asks us if we have the courage to drink the water when it is actually offered to us.
Because we all bring our own silent tests to the world, we look for proof. But the top series, Surah Kawthar, challenges us to look for a deeper resonance.
Right.
It asks us to listen for the music of truth, rather than just checking the composer's credentials. Which brings us to one final provocative thought to leave you with.
The final verse.
The final verse of the surah. Verily thy enemy is the one cut off. As we mentioned, historically, this was a victory lap, a promise that the enemies who mocked Muhammad's grief would be defeated and erased from history.
But the Bab, in his commentary, reframes this entirely. He turns it from a historical statement about dead tribes in Arabia into a solemn, immediate mirror for the reader.
He turns the lens inward. The enemy is no longer a historical figure. The enemy is a spiritual state. What if the ultimate test of any profound, worldview-shattering truth isn't whether you can dissect its historical credentials? What if the test isn't whether it perfectly matches the map you had in your head?
Then what is the test?
What if the ultimate test is simply what happens to your own soul when you encounter it? If the water of life, the abundance of Kawthar, is offered to you, but you reject it because it didn't come in the specific cup you expected, you aren't proving the water is fake.
No, you are simply choosing to die of thirst.
Are you, in fact, cutting yourself off from your own abundance? Are you becoming the one cut off? It's a heavy question, but it's the question the balance asks of all of us.